Imagine waking up one cold December morning in New York City, only to hear that millions of dollars had simply vanished, stolen in a daring heist straight out of a gangster film. No alarms, no gunfights, just a carefully planned robbery that left the FBI scrambling and the Mafia celebrating. This wasn't fiction. This was real. This was the Lufthansa Heist. The year was 1978. New York was buzzing with crime, corruption, and the powerful grip of organized crime families. At the center of it all was John F. Kennedy International Airport, a place where millions of dollars in cash regularly passed through, often with little security. It was the perfect target. On December 11th, just before dawn, a team of masked men stormed into the Lufthansa cargo terminal. They weren't amateurs. They moved with precision, like a crew that had practiced every step. Within minutes, they had tied up employees, broken into the vault, and disappeared into the night with nearly $6 million in cash and jewelry, worth over $25 million today. What made the Lufthansa heist legendary wasn't just the amount stolen. It was the aftermath. The robbery was linked to the Lucchese crime family, and soon, greed and paranoia turned the once-perfect crime into a bloodbath. Associates vanished. Bodies began to turn up. And the money? Most of it was never seen again. The Lufthansa heist became more than just a robbery. It became a legend of American crime. A story of power, betrayal, and mystery that still fascinates people decades later. And it all began on that cold December morning, when a handful of men walked into an airport and pulled off one of the greatest heists in history. Behind every legendary crime, there's always someone pulling the strings. For the Lufthansa heist, that man was Jimmy Burke, a feared associate of New York's Lucchese crime family. To most people, he looked like a sharp dresser and streetwise hustler. But in the underworld, he was known as Jimmy the Gent, a man with a reputation for making money and making people disappear. The idea for the heist came from a small-time bookmaker named Martin Krugman, who heard about the mountains of unprotected cash flowing through JFK Airport. At the time, Lufthansa Airlines transported millions of dollars in American currency from overseas flights, storing it temporarily in a cargo terminal before it was moved to banks. The money was practically sitting in a vault, waiting for someone bold enough to take it. Krugman shared this golden tip with Henry Hill, a mob associate whose life later inspired the film Goodfellas. Hill passed the information to Jimmy Burke, and that's when things got serious. Burke was a man who didn't take chances. He studied every angle, every weakness, and every potential rat. He handpicked a crew of trusted men: Tommy DeSimone, Angelo Sepe, Louis Cafra, and several others. Each had a role. Each was sworn to silence. They spent weeks preparing. Timing was everything. The guards at the Lufthansa terminal were predictable, the security cameras outdated, and the alarm systems far from foolproof. All it would take was speed, coordination, and nerves of steel. But this wasn't just about money. Pulling off a heist of this scale meant power. It meant respect in the eyes of the Mafia families. And Jimmy Burke knew that if they succeeded, his crew would become legends. What none of them could have known was that this perfect plan would soon unravel, not because of the police, but because of greed, paranoia, and betrayal. The pieces were set. The crew was ready. And on December 11th, 1978, the world would witness the beginning of the most infamous heist in American history. It was the early hours of December 11th, 1978. New York was quiet, the streets wrapped in winter cold. At 3 a.m., a van rolled silently into the cargo area of JFK Airport. Inside were 6 masked men, Jimmy Burke's hand-picked crew, ready to pull off the job of a lifetime. The plan was simple but dangerous. The men had studied every movement of the night shift employees, every delivery schedule, and every security routine. Timing was everything. They couldn't afford mistakes. As the crew stormed the Lufthansa cargo building, they moved with military precision. Guns drawn, they quickly overpowered the workers inside. There were no wild shootouts, no loud explosions, just the cold efficiency of men who knew exactly what they were doing. The employees were tied up, gagged, and ordered not to look at their captors. Anyone who resisted was met with the chilling threat, "Do as you're told, and nobody gets hurt." The key to the operation was the vault, where Lufthansa stored cash flown in from West Germany. Bundles of American dollars, millions of them, sat waiting to be moved to banks the next morning. With inside information from a crooked airport worker, the crew knew exactly where to go. Within minutes, they cracked open the secured area. What they found was staggering: $5 million in cash and nearly $1 million in jewelry. Adjusted for today's value, that's over $25 million. It was the largest cash robbery in US history at the time. In less than an hour, the crew loaded the money into their van and disappeared into the dark. No alarms were triggered, no police arrived on time. By dawn, New York woke up to shocking headlines. An international airline had been robbed under the nose of airport security. To the outside world, it looked like the perfect crime. But for the men involved, the nightmare was only beginning. Because when you steal millions from the mob, the hardest part isn't the robbery, it's surviving afterward. At first, the Lufthansa heist looked like a dream come true. Jimmy Burke and his crew had pulled off the biggest robbery in American history without firing a single shot. The newspapers called it a robbery straight out of the movies. The Mafia was thrilled with the haul, and everyone expected a future filled with luxury. But if history teaches us anything, it's this: the bigger the score, the bigger the danger. The FBI immediately launched an aggressive investigation. JFK Airport became the center of a media storm, and federal agents swarmed New York, questioning workers, searching warehouses, and tapping phones. While Burke had planned the heist carefully, what he couldn't control was the greed, carelessness, and paranoia of the men who helped him. Some of the crew members ignored Burke's strict orders to lay low. They bought expensive cars, fur coats, and flashy gifts for their girlfriends, drawing attention exactly when they needed to stay invisible. For Burke, this was unacceptable. He knew that the FBI was watching, and in his world, loose ends had only one solution. One by one, people connected to the heist began to vanish. Some were found dead in car trunks, others disappeared without a trace. Bodies turned up in vacant lots, rivers, and abandoned cars. Burke wasn't just protecting himself, he was eliminating anyone who could talk. The killings created a chilling atmosphere of fear. Even close friends of the crew weren't safe. Anyone who had touched the money, or even knew too much, was marked. It was said that Burke trusted no one, and his paranoia consumed the entire circle. Despite years of investigation, law enforcement never recovered most of the stolen money. Out of all the men involved, very few lived long enough to spend their share. In the end, the heist became less about riches and more about blood. The Lufthansa heist has since become legendary, not just for the record-breaking amount stolen, but for the brutal aftermath that followed. A perfect robbery on paper turned into one of the deadliest betrayals in mob history. And to this day, much of the money has never been found.